Jesse Itzler is the founder of Marquis Jet, one of the largest private jet companies in the world, and now an owner of the NBA's Atlanta Hawks. He went from being a rapper and producing theme songs for NBA teams to becoming a best-selling author and an entrepreneur worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Need motivation?
Watch a top 10 with Believe Nation.
Top 10, I got a top 10. Got my motivation high for my top 10. Gotta learn from the wise women and men. All my life, like na 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 na. For my top 10, top 10, na 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 na. This one's for my top 10.
Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and I make these videos because you are probably the most ambitious person in your circle, but you know you're capable of more. And you get that push by surrounding yourself with the best. So today, let's learn from one of the best, Jesse Itzler, and my take on his top 10 rules of success. Enjoy. Okay, let's kick it off with rule number 1. Put yourself first.
I was filling up my calendar with so much non-essential stuff.
Yeah, non-productive things.
Because
right.
I felt obligated to say yes to lunch meetings.
Yes.
Will you meet this guy for 15 minutes? Will you take this call? And I just didn't want to be like, oh, Jesse's an asshole. He won't take this meeting. So I would just do it. And I realized like I was losing control of my own time. Mm-hmm. And like I lost control of my own time. So I started saying no to everything, canceling everything that wasn't going to really, that I didn't need to do.
Right.
That was other people putting demands on me. Mm-hmm. And I really started focusing on me. I mean, I think so much of business is a reflection of you. And so many of us don't invest in ourselves.
Yes.
So I drew a little pie chart of my time, of how I want to spend my time. And in my 24 hours, I broke it up into 4 different sections. And I make sure that every day I have 3 hours for me. So I can, because I think it's just so important that we put ourselves first. Mm-hmm. And we really don't. So many of us don't. And you get all these arrows shot at you every day, bills, problems, friends need this, work, the plumber has to come because this is broken. This thing won't start. It's like you're always dodging arrows.
Right.
There's no way around that. But if you don't take the 3 hours to at least separate yourself from the constant attack of arrows,
you're crazy.
Bonkers.
Rule number 2, search for interesting experiences.
You'll see something, be curious, be interested, and do more than just the casual, hey, it's nice to meet you.
It is. I mean, if I find someone that's inspiring or an event or something, I try to introduce he, she, or it to my life. And that's part of just my own personal development. I learn better through experience than through books. I like to be challenged, and I love interesting people. I like people that think differently, that act differently. That's what attracts me. That's just what makes me feel like I'm getting the most out of life, And that is, I'm on a constant search for that because I'm very aware of my own mortality. I'm 50 years old. I'm turning 50, and the average American lives to be 78. And if that were the case and I was average, that means I got 28 years left. And that dictates, well, who do I want to spend that time with and what do I want to do? And that's a driving, it's like on repeat in my head. So to answer your question, that's sort of what makes me tick.
Rule number 3, face your walls.
I always was dancing to my own drum. My parents gave me a really long leash, which was a great gift for me growing up. They let me do whatever I wanted to do within reason.
Yeah.
And I always, all of us, we always come against this wall of fear, this crazy wall of fear. And you can either go to the wall and turn around, or you can go through the wall.
Yes.
And I always, every time I turned around and went back home because I was too scared, I had crazy resentment. Or crazy guilt that I wasn't able to do it. Regret, not resentment, regret.
Yeah.
And every time I went through the wall and got to the other side, it was so addicting. And I was so proud of myself. So let me just give you a quick example. When I was growing up, I grew up in New York City, or on Long Island in the 80s when breakdancing and rap and all this stuff was happening.
Yep.
And I was really into breakdancing. I don't know, I don't look like it, but get some cardboard out here, man.
We need to do that.
Something.
Mike, get some cardboard.
Okay. And I decided that I could make more money probably if I went to Washington, D.C., because the kids in Washington, D.C. couldn't be as good as the kids in New York. We invented this whole genre. Okay. So I got my friend Myron, who's my partner. My sister just got her driver's license, and I convinced her to drive us to Washington, D.C. And the whole drive down, I was having all that self-doubt.
Yeah.
You know, at a young age, 14, 15 years old, like, what if the kids are better? What if no one shows up? What if we get booed? What if we go there and I stink?
Yeah.
And so I was almost talking myself out. I was building the wall of doubt up brick by brick in my own head.
Yeah.
And when we got there, we went to a little bank in Georgetown, and we set up a boom box in a parking lot of a bank, and we hit play, and my friend started spinning on his head, and he passed it to me, and a crowd gathered around. And ultimately, after I did my thing, more people came. I took my hat and I passed it around, and we made about $200. I paid my sister for the gas money, and then awesome. Myron and I split $82, $41 each. Awesome. And this guy, you know, he's counting up the money, and he's counting up the money, and he gets all the money, and then he sprints over to me, and he gives me a bear hug, and he goes, "Jess, we're rich." And what the reason why we were rich is because on that particular trip, despite all the fear, this young little kid that was so scared, I went around that wall and I realized I could be rewarded. And I was like, I want more of that.
Rule number 4, differentiate yourself.
And you started out, from my research, as a rapper, am I right?
I did.
Okay, so why were you inspired to be in the music space? Was that always something you loved to do as a child? Or?
Yeah, you know, I grew up in the 80s in New York City and Long Island, which was a focal point for rap when it was starting out. So I just got, at an early age, had a real interest in it. And then when I was in college, I made a demo tape. And like most people trying to get into the music business in college or in the late 80s, I sent out about 100 cassettes. At the time, it was cassettes,
right,
to A&R executives, to, you know, presidents of labels. I called everybody, and I got nothing callback.
And so when was this? What year was this?
That was in 90, right?
Wow.
When all my college friends were doing resumes, and I was sending out cassettes.
Wow.
And that was my first real experience with like pure, full-out rejection.
Okay, you didn't get rejected before then?
Not 100 times in a row.
Right.
And but it forced me to start to think differently and figure out that, you know what, you really got to kind of differentiate yourself and separate yourself to get noticed and get things done.
Right.
Which ended up being a really valuable lesson for me down the road.
Also, if you want to have more self-belief and self-confidence, I've designed a special free program to help you get it, where I send you a video every day for 254 days. The research says it can take up to 254 days for you to build a new habit, and this program will help you get it. Once again, it's free, and the link to join is in the description below.
You can be incredibly productive, incredibly creative, incredibly free when you take control of your time. Now, fear is a really powerful thing. But when you surrender and say, I'm not scared of fear, it's unbelievably liberating.
Rule number 5, start with the end scene.
How do you teach somebody to look for those opportunities, to create those opportunities? Because everyone's going to hear the no, but 99.99999% of people just accept it.
I think it's different. I think when you're young, the consequences don't matter as much. You know, you're just thinking about the end result. It's a little bit different now. I have 4 children, and I don't think I could take the risk necessarily that I did when I was 21 and living check to check. But at that point, the consequences didn't matter. If I had to get thrown out of the TED conference or whatever, it didn't really matter. I would just try again. But it's always been having, for me, it's been probably similar to you when you started your business, but it's always having the end of the movie in my head and then filling in the script. So I knew I was going to leave there with a sale. I just had to write the script. And the script might change. There might be, you know, call an audible and you have to rewrite the script. But the end of the script was always the same. I'm going to run 100 miles. Okay, well, how are you going to do that, Jesse? You know, like you're not like a crazy endurance runner. Well, then let's think backwards. How, you know, but it starts with the end scene in the movie, even the exit. You know, like, okay, we're going to build this to sell. I don't know who I'm going to sell it to. But that's sort of been always kind of the mentality. And I think the second point to that is once you get over the fear of being embarrassed, you know, no one likes to be embarrassed. But once you get over being scared of being embarrassed, it's super liberating. And it allows you to go into lanes that otherwise you wouldn't go into.
Rule number 6, build your life resume.
I think a mistake, and it's not a conscious mistake that I think a lot of people make is, they get a victory or something amazing happens in their life, and they talk about it for 5 years and they celebrate it and they live off of that energy. And I've always been like, when it's done, it's done. I don't wear a Marquis Jet hat anymore.
Yeah.
I don't wear a Zico hat anymore. Like that's in the rear view. And I've always just been like a what's next, okay? I'm an adrenaline junkie. I love newness. I love challenges. So I've always been, what's the next thing? What can I do? And the life resume concept is it's just, when I go at the end of my run, I want to be like, do as much as I can and experience as much as I can. I was just in a financial planning meeting, and the guy said to me, if you had a choice between leaving your kids with either a lot of money or a lot of life experiences, what would you choose? And it's an obvious answer. You want life experiences. So I just want to look back and have no regrets that I wasted time or I didn't do something because I was scared. And, I just like to keep stacking things on top of wins or losses, whatever it is, just keep going and seeing, as the more that you experience, the more you have to offer. The more you know about yourself, the more empathy you have, the more compassion you have, the more you can share with other people. And that's always been something that makes me feel good. And the one thing we all humans have in common is we all want to feel good, period. Money to make us feel good, health to make us feel good, relationships to make us feel good. That's the one common denominator, and that makes me feel good.
Rule number 7, start the process.
The common thread throughout all my journey as an entrepreneur in everything is I had no prior experience in anything that I did. And for me, that was the greatest blessing. Because for me, it meant rip up the playbook. No one taught me how to do it. So the whole industry was operating the same way. And I always say to my employees, Sarah, my wife does the same thing. If no one taught you how to do your job, how would you do it? If you ripped up the playbook and you said, how would I treat my customer? How would I go after and pitch this? That's where innovation comes from. That's where innovation comes from. Everybody else in the space, they were doing the same playbook. All the brochures looked the same, and we didn't know anything. We didn't know anything. So for us, it was a greatest blessing. So I think experience is overrated. It's important, but it takes so damn long.
Yes.
And if we would have waited to get 3 years on the line, and there would have been 4 other jet companies, and we would have never have done it. So
wow, that's so true.
you got to start the process. As an entrepreneur, I think the number one thing is start. You never have it all figured out.
Yes.
It's never the right time. You never have enough experience.
Yeah.
But if you let that slow you down until it's the right time and the right experience, come on, man, the world's so fast.
Rule number 8, be resourceful.
My partner and I were guests on a private jet when I was 27 or 28 years old. And when we walked onto the airplane, it was like the scene in The Wizard of Oz when everything goes from black and white to color. People fly like this. This is unbelievable. I want to fly like this. And by the time we landed, we're like, let's start a private jet company. Definitely, so we could fly privately, except we had no airplanes. So we went to a company called NetJets, owned by Warren Buffett, the 800-pound gorilla. They had 600 plus airplanes in the fleet, and pitched this idea for a 25-hour prepaid jet card, which was called Marquis Jet.
How'd you get that interview, that time with them?
Oh, it's a crazy story. I had a friend of mine who called me up, and prior to that, I was putting experiences together for wealthy people, impossible to get experiences. And a friend of mine called me up and said that he had a friend whose daughter was turning 16, and he wanted to do something at the Christina Aguilera concert. And I happened to have a relationship with the management company, and I got his daughter on as kind of like a backup singer kind of thing with the mic off. And the guy called me up after the concert, the next day she was the star of the town. Everyone was talking about it. And he was like, I have no idea who you are or what you do, but if you ever need anything, call me. That was amazing what you did for my daughter. And it turns out he was the president of this company called NetJets that owned all these airplanes. So a year later, when we had this idea, I was like, I think I know someone in this business. The guy that we had sing his daughter sang at the Aguilera concert. And that's how we got the meeting.
Wow.
But the meeting actually, when we pitched the idea, the meeting lasted 12 minutes and they threw us out. And the president of NetJets said, and this is almost a direct quote, he said, cool idea, but if you think we're going to give 2 kids that didn't break 1,000 on their SAT, which, Tom, pissed me off. I got a 980, but I've convinced myself I've gotten over, keep telling yourself you broke 1,000. He's like, I'm never giving you guys access to our airplanes. Because the notion was, if we could sell and market onto their fleet through this 25-hour program called Marquis Jet, that's how we would piggyback off their airplanes. And they threw us out of the meeting, and then we were relentless, and we came back, and we realized that we couldn't sell this concept through a PowerPoint, because they see 1,000 PowerPoints a month. So we literally brought our own focus group in to bring the meeting to life. And one by one, the guys stood up. We had Carl Banks from the New York Giants and Run from Run DMC and a powerful real estate mogul, and they explained that they would never buy a fraction what NetJet was selling, but they would buy a 25-hour card if it was offered. And that's how we ended up solidifying the opportunity. And then to your point, when we started the company, this is back in 2000, so I had no sophisticated way to get leads. I didn't know a lot of wealthy people. And the only way that I could really build my database or sell anybody was to go to events where rich people hung out. So I heard about this conference called the TED. I didn't even know what it was, in Monterey, California. So I flew commercial, transferred 3 flights, drove 6 hours when I landed to get to TED to try to pitch this idea to anyone that would listen. But when I got to the TED conference, it was like Fort Knox. Everybody had credentials, double credentials, and I had nothing. And they wouldn't let me anywhere near the venue. So I went to the local coffee shop and just trying to figure out how I'm gonna get in or sneak in or get someone to get me in or get access. And I realized like every hour or two, everyone with credentials was walking into the coffee shop and they were buying lattes and muffins and lattes and muffins and lattes and muffins. So the next morning, I woke up at 5 o'clock and I went to the coffee shop and I bought every single muffin that they had. I took all the inventory out of the shop. I'm like, I'll take all your muffins. They gave me like 80 muffins. And I was sitting, and then when the first wave of TED attendees, broke for their break and they came, one of the customers said, can I have a latte and a muffin? And the guy said, well, I'll give you a latte, but we're all out of muffins. And when he was walking out, I said, excuse me, sir. Look, I happen to have an extra muffin. Actually, I have 800 of them. But if you want a muffin, you can have one of my muffins. It's like, no, get out of here. I said, no, I realized that we started, well, what do you do? What are you doing here? We started having a conversation, and he said, do you mind if I join you? And I, my only thought was like, you are qualified to buy a card. You can join me. And he was my first sale. He was my first sale. A guy who owned a company that sold it to eBay. And that was the start of the adrenaline rush of, okay, let me try to crack this code of, how we can build this thing with not a big database.
Rule number 9, maximize your time.
It's amazing how much you can do in 24 hours. Think about it. Get 7 hours of sleep, take 3 hours for yourself is 10, and work a full day, 8 hours. You have 6 hours left of family time.
Yeah.
And like that's a lot of time.
That's a lot of time.
So you could, just
You've
think
already
about
caught
it.
up on everything in an hour.
No, but,
yeah.
but my point is, and that's what I got out of this guy living with me. 24 hours is a long time, and we maximized the time. I would get home at 11 o'clock some nights, and we would spend an hour from 11 to 12 working out if we didn't do it or we had to get more in. Every minute was maximized. It wasn't like we were just going to go and be like, you know what, let's just go, whatever. No, it was all about being productive with my own time.
And rule number 10, the last one before a very special bonus clip, is have passion for the process.
When I was first getting started, the pressure to me was I converted to enthusiasm. So I didn't really look at it as pressure. I looked at it as like, I had a real passion for the process. And people misunderstand passion. Like they think passion has to be around the widget that you're selling or the product that you're selling. The passion's around the process. It's around going with your team and trying to make a sale and getting rejected and laughing about it and figuring it out. And that's what the process is. It's the journey.
Now I've got a really special bonus clip that I think you're gonna enjoy. But before that, it's time for the question of the day. I wanna know, what was your single biggest takeaway from this video and how are you gonna take action on it this week. When you schedule in what day, what time, and what place you're going to take action, you have a 91% chance of actually following through versus just a 35% chance if you just got motivated but never created a specific plan. And when you share your plan publicly and have some accountability, you increase your chances even further of actually following through. So I want to know your single biggest takeaway and your plan of action this week in the comments so I can celebrate you.
And what was interesting about Marquis Jet,
Wow.
it wasn't that we built this amazing company, it was an amazingly successful venture.
Clearly.
And, but that wasn't the goal for me. The goal for me were the people that we flew. Because we flew 4,000 of the who's who of entrepreneurs, CEOs, athletes, entertainers, and I was like, wow, here I am, I'm 30 years old. I was obsessed with meeting these people and learning about their daily routines. So what I would do is, I would say like every conversation was like, what time do you get up? What do you eat? How do you spend your time? How do you live rich? How do you do this? What's a vacation look like? And I would take all these habits from these winners at the highest level and start to incorporate them in my life. And the things that worked, stuck. And the things that didn't, I got rid of them. And over time, built this system. You mentioned in the beginning, like your life resume, built this system that works for me. And as I've evolved, now I have 4 kids, my system evolves because I can't have the same system as single Jesse, 40 years old and no kids, where I have the freedom to do what I want. Now I have way more responsibilities, with my family. So the system evolves. So that was the gift.
If you want to change your life for free in the next 30 days, check out my training right here below. Or if you want to see the top 10 I did on his wife, Sarah Blakely, check out the video right there next to me. I think you'll enjoy them. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.